Hello, hello, hello. It is Thursday. It is 5:30. That means it's time for Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power and education in real and actionable ways because we know that power and education is a real thing. And we know that instructional power is even more real. I'm your host, Dr. Tangi Reed Marshall, excited to have this conversation with you this evening. I want to start off by asking you a question. What are you thankful for? In the Marshall household, we use Thursdays as a day for Thanksgiving. We would text each other on a group chat and say, "Today is Thankful Thursday." I will tell you what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for watching my husband open up his chiropractic clinic in our town of Ashburn, Virginia. He had a grand opening. They had members of the Chamber of Commerce come. It was fantastic. They had prizes. The space is beautiful. So if you live in Ashburn, Virginia, consider this your invitation to attend the health source of Ashburn and get Dr. Jeet Desai on your side so you can move better, feel better, and live better. But anyway, that's what I'm thankful for. What are you thankful for? We know that being thankful is the door to more. So spend time today and be very thankful about something. As school begins, I want to bring up this question that people always ask me. Why do you talk about power in education? Because power is real. School is a mirror of society, and we know that. But oftentimes we can feel the dynamics of power, but we don't have a name for the dynamics of power. So I want to give you the definition that we use every week, and here it is. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is what we mean when we talk about capital P in power, the structures that determine the access points for students. And then the other piece of this is the instructional power that happens at the building, classroom, and sometimes even at the district level. So, what does it mean when we talk about instructional power? And here is what it means. It can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. That means if you're an educator at any level and your decisions impact two things: what students learn and what they learn how to do, you are exercising your instructional power. If your decisions open access or constrain access, those decisions are power laden decisions. And I lean very heavily into this based upon Beverly Tatum's idea, where she said, power is the smog in the air that really filters through and controls every relationship. Like I said, you might not be able to put your finger definitely on it, but you know it when it's there. And that's why we talk about power. And I want to invite you, as you are either back at school or headed back to school, to get your copy of our What Student Engagement Looks Like Beyond Compliance. There's a QR code for you, and there is the link. We want you to really consider what student engagement looks like beyond students simply raising their hands, or what I call the Statue of Liberty person, right? The person with their hands up the most, the person who talks the most. We often consider engagement by the evidence of students doing what adults believe it looks like. And we often overlook. So, as much as we think we know what it looks like, we often overlook some of the lesser known ways in which a child might be engaged. So, if a child is silent, we might think they're not engaged, and they might actually be more deeply connected and taking the time to understand concepts more than the person whose hand is always up. And that's why we want you to get a copy of the article, What It Looks Like Beyond Compliance. And your next invitation, even though summer is coming to an end, we are still sharing our summer power chats. And this week we got a wonderful summer power chat coming up. And actually, our summer power chat this week is also our guest for today. We're going to be talking to Dr. Pam Seda. She's the founder and CEO of Seda Educational Consulting. She's the author of Choosing to See, a Framework for Equity in the Math Classroom. I wanted to talk to Dr. Pam tonight because her take on math really exemplifies this juxtaposition between adult decision making about math, who deserves to be seen as a thinker in math, and what are some ways in which there can be a framework put in place for teachers to disrupt the automatic ways in which they believe certain students are quote unquote math kids and others are not. So I'm excited to welcome Dr. Pam to Let's Talk Power Live. Hey, Dr. Pam.
Hi, so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm so glad you're here. And let's go ahead and get into it. So, you titled your book, Choosing to See. Talk to us about what does it mean for an educator to truly choose to see students in the math classroom?
Yeah, so the choosing to see is actually choosing to see two things. Firstly, is choosing to see our students, choosing to see the brilliance that exists in every kid, and not only choosing to see that brilliance, but choosing to create classroom activities, classroom environments so that you are actively uncovering that brilliance. And that is a mindset, and it's a choice, because oftentimes we believe stereotypes about students because of their identities. And really, what we choose to believe about students really is a choice as well. So that's the first thing, choosing to see the brilliance rather than choosing to see the deficits, choosing only to see the mistakes or the weaknesses or what kids don't know. It's making a choice to say, there is brilliance in every student, and my job is to uncover that and engage students in ways so that not only I see their brilliance, but they see their own brilliance. So that's one. But the other choice that teachers have to make is choosing to see the inequities of how our current systems work. Because as my book title said, it's a framework for equity in the math classroom. And the book came out in 2021, where equity was a buzzword everywhere in education. Everyone was talking about equity. There was no one who didn't say they were supporting equity, or at least nobody was saying it at that time.
Correct. Now, though.
But what I was finding is people didn't recognize inequity when I saw it, because everybody thought that they were doing equity, but the inequitable outcomes were nonetheless, and were very glaring, but nobody recognized it. And so that was the other reason why I wrote the book is I wanted to make it plain that this is what equity looks like, but this is also what inequity looks like. And this is what happens if we don't fix it, if we don't change it. This is the impact of it is on kids. So you not only have to choose to see, but you have to choose to act on based on what you see.
That's critical, choosing to act on what you do see. I'm going to share some math data points with you, and let's talk through what we see here. So math outcomes tell us that there really is urgency, right? In 2024, only 28% of eighth graders performed at or above NAEP proficient in math. Nearly 40% of eighth graders performed below NAEP basic. And then the eighth grade math score remained far below pre-pandemic levels of 2019. When you hear these numbers, and you know them better than I do because you live in the math world, what is the urgency that choosing to see can begin to disrupt some of this?
Yeah, I think there's several things that are going on through my mind. One is the fact that historically in our country, we've never done a good job of teaching math to level of understanding. We never have. So this idea that we need to go back to the basics or we need to go back to some time where we did it better, that world never existed. That's just the reality. NAEP test wasn't a thing when I was in school,
No,
right?
it
And
was
so,
not. Because
right,
when we were in school, NAEP was not a thing. Yeah, we didn't have
right.
it. Yeah.
So since No Child Behind, we've started collecting data and making the data available publicly. So the
Mhm.
public is now just has some metrics to now really realize how bad of a job that we've been doing in mathematics. But I kind of challenge people to really challenge that idea that we're doing so much worse than what we used to do in times past.
That's such an interesting take that you say. Two things I heard you say. We've never done well teaching math. And now I'm even more excited that you're saying we need to disrupt this idea that there was this magical mathematical pedagogy going on somewhere, that we kind of must have messed it up. So now we got to go back and fix it all, right? So there's no magic math pedagogy that we've messed up somewhere, which is encouraging because we keep having this recurring conversation. And when we get back to some other things, there's a piece in your book that really, really comes to mind. You bring up two pieces. You bring up stereotype threat, and you bring up Aaron Godfrey's idea of system justification. So in a moment, I want to talk about both of those, but here's some other numbers that I came across. Access to math opportunity is not automatic. 39% of public middle schools serving grades 7 and 8 do not offer Algebra 1. Algebra 1 in middle school can open the pathway to more advanced math in high school. Even when advanced math is available, Black and Latino students are less likely to be enrolled.
Yeah, that is, part of the urgency. There is urgency around mathematics, but not for the reasons as we spoke before, like somehow all of a sudden math became a crisis.
It's been a crisis.
It is there is an urgency around it now, only because the world has changed so much. And because of technology and the decision making and the algorithms that totally run our country now, that's different than when it was when we were coming up. The skill set and the understanding and the math literacy that students need now to prepare them for a world that didn't exist for us is massive. It's huge. And so what that means is we have to teach kids how to solve problems. They need to know how to think algebraically in order to be able to have any type of role in developing and contributing to our society. So the expectations have just risen exponentially, really, for our kids because our society has changed so much, so drastically because of technology.
Yeah, that's a critical point. And I had one of your favorite colleagues. I've had both of them on. I had for some reason I get hit with all the math people. And I'm a literacy people. So I'm gonna need some literacy people to join the show. But I had both I had Dion on the show. And I also had Dr. Deborah on the show. And they both talked about the significance of a lot of times math teachers don't have the requisite math knowledge and conceptual understanding necessary to really support the kind of learning. But here's my question inside of all of that. Given that we know that the people who are doing the educating may not possess the right levels of math knowledge, how does that contribute to so many kids being seen as low or underperforming?
Absolutely. So I kind of think about it in terms of vision 1 versus vision 2.
Okay.
I think about vision 1 has to do with how most of us experience math. When I say vision 1 of success. You're successful at math if you can reproduce the procedures that the teacher gave you so that you could get the right answer quickly.
Got it.
That's how we learned math.
That is.
Right?
Yeah.
The problem with that definition of success is you can be successful and still not understand the math.
Right.
You can reproduce answers.
Yes.
You can do what the teacher told you to do. And if you can remember the steps, you can get the right answers, but have no idea what the right answers mean, what they represent, which means you cannot apply it in a different situation. So if it shows up in a real life situation, you won't recognize it. You'll have no idea how to use it. You can't connect it to anything. So if you can't connect it to something, you probably won't remember it. I always quote this from a colleague named Rick Wormley. He said, nothing gets into long-term memory unless it's connected to something that's already there.
Your brain, I said it last week. I was talking to, who was I talking to? Dr. Mitchell Brookins. He has a new book coming out, and we were talking about literacy. And I said, your brain has a hooking system. And new stuff coming in has to find its related hook in order for the stuff to stick.
Yes.
And that's what makes learning hard, because, and the power in that is that if in fact your brain is learning something that you have no hooks for, the hard part is building the hook so that later on you can have the hook.
Absolutely. So in math, because math is taught so abstractly, right? And it is abstract. That's the reason why we teach algebra. We want abstract thinking so you can apply it to a lot of different ways. So it is abstract, but learning anything can't be taught abstractly. There's a difference between teaching abstract concepts and then learning and connecting it to something. And so that's why the teacher knowledges is so important for two reasons. One is teachers have to understand the concepts that underlie the math to be able to connect it to the student's prior knowledge. And unfortunately, most of us were never taught that. We weren't taught the conceptual understanding. We were just taught how to get answers. So that's why sometimes non-math educators really question, well, what do you mean the teachers don't know the math they're teaching? They're teaching third grade math. You mean they don't know how to add double-digit numbers?
No,
yes, they know how to get right answers, but they were never taught, why do you line up the decimal point? Why do you have to have a common denominator? We were never taught why any of that. And I didn't learn any of that until I started teaching it. Why did I learn it? Because my kids weren't getting it. So and I have to figure it out if they have questions. So if I give them the procedures and I tell them step by step how to get the answers and they don't get it, I have to be able to respond to them and figure out what they're not understanding and how to connect it by understanding the math deeply myself. So just being able to get the answer is not sufficient. Now, this is where power comes in.
Yes.
Because we often talk about the power with between teachers and students.
Yeah.
But we also oftentimes don't talk about the power and how we use the fact that teachers may not know. We use that against teachers as well. And we blame them and say, well, you should know. And we don't create space for them to be learners.
That's right.
It's not their fault that they never learned the conceptually, because our school system was never set up to do that until recently.
And so we've got this entire system that says it wants to be a thing, right? It says it wants to be this thing, but all of the structures around the system are still the old structures.
Yes. That's what I call Vision 1 versus Vision 2.
Vision 2.
Vision 2 is creating critical thinkers, problem solvers. Kids need to learn to reason, think, and solve problems, because we don't know what jobs they're going to be in. AI is changing things so quickly. All those entry level positions don't even exist anymore because AI can do them now.
That's right.
We don't know what jobs they're going to need, but we do know they're going to need to be able to apply mathematics in meaningful ways. They're going to need to be able to understand it. They're going to need to know how to recognize patterns. They're going to need to know how to solve problems. They're going to need to know how to make decisions based on data. We know all of that.
Right.
So we say this is what we're trying to develop. But as you said, all of our systems are based on Vision 1 success.
Vision 1 success. But we keep talking about Vision 2 success. And we talked about, as the opening, when I gave that definition of power, and we talked about what that was, and I'll bring it back. We talk about it, right? It is the control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment. Those are critical elements that are common to democratic design. If we keep talking about vision one outcomes, but we
Right.
say we want vision two outcomes. We have a systemic mismatch.
Yes, absolutely. And then when you mix in stereotypes
When you
that
mix
are
in that,
out there that
right?
we don't control the stereotypes,
We don't.
but we make choices about which stereotypes we choose to believe.
That's right.
And we also make choices about which stereotypes we choose to actively disrupt.
That's right.
Those are
And so
choices that we make.
and I want you to talk deeply about that because there were two concepts that you brought out in your book, and the person who did stereotype threat, and I remember the book title, Vivaldi, Raising Vivaldi. I remember the book title, but the author's name is escaping me. But you talk about stereotype threat, and you talk about systemic justification from the idea of choosing to see. And we know the data around Black and Brown children. And I'm going to talk about the data regarding Black and Brown children specifically. Um, how is that impacting the pedagogical decisions that are power laden, that are continuing these threats and this systemic justification? So tell us what they are first, and then we'll go on to the next piece.
Yeah. So, the bottom line is when we're talking about vision one success versus vision two, it could just be a professional preference until we think about the impact on our students.
Right.
So if we define success in terms of getting answers quickly and being able to quickly reproduce the procedures that the teacher taught us, if I can't get the answer quickly, let's say I'm a deep thinker and it takes me longer, or I just make mistakes, it just takes me longer, right? Kids tend to internalize the message, well, I'm not smart in math. I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I can't get this. So they start internalizing this message, especially if there are stereotypes associated to their identity.
Yeah.
It could be, oh, the rest of everybody, they get it. I don't get it. So
Right.
maybe the stereotype about me is true. And so they begin receiving those messages starting at a very young age. By the time they get to middle and high school, they have wholeheartedly believed that they're not math people.
That's right.
Not because of anything in them,
yeah,
but because we created that mindset.
Yep.
And I used to think it was an internal problem. I used to think it was a kid problem. Like they don't have the right mindset. That's why they can't learn math. It wasn't until I started looking at the systems that realized our systems created that mindset. Our vision one instruction creates that mindset that only kids who are fast and can get their answers quickly, they're smart. And if you can't do that, then you're not smart. And so we have set up these gatekeeping systems, and math classes just become these sorting mechanisms to decide who's smart and who's not. And it's not just in math. We use math to say kids are smart in general.
Everywhere. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Absolutely right. Right. And you and I have both, we have seen it, we have heard it, we have lived it. And you've been in restaurants where people say, I'm not a math person, and they hand you the bill because Pam is the math person and Pam can figure out the tips and all the other things. Here's something else I came across. I think you will find it, and you just spoke about this. Math confidence is built before middle and high school.
Absolutely.
So in 2024, 46% of fourth graders reported high confidence in their math knowledge and skills. Among higher performing students, 75% reported high math confidence. Among lower performing students, or students whose outcomes are what we would consider low performing, only 19% reported high math confidence. What a gap.
I'm not surprised by this at all. The thing that does surprise me, though, is that there are people who look at that data and think the response is to just tell their kids you're smart. They think that if they just tell them, oh, you can do it, that's enough. That's what surprises me. Kids don't need us to tell them. They need experiences that give them the opportunity to demonstrate that brilliance.
Yes.
Because their experiences in math class is what created the lack of confidence. And so if we want to replace that lack of confidence with confidence, we have to change how they experience with math. So what am I talking about? How do we respond when a kid gives a wrong answer? Do we respond like something's wrong with them? What does our facial expression give? What does our body language communicate? What
Right.
was our size? And I was guilty. I used to have attitude when my pre-calculus kids came to my class and I asked them what was 1/2 plus 1/3, and they would tell me 2/5. And I would get attitude. And then I began to realize that's not changing.
Right.
My
Right.
attitude with them doesn't help anything.
Right.
And so what I had to learn was, okay, this is the reality. I need to normalize the fact that if I'm getting ready to teach adding fractions with letters in them, we need to do a quick review of adding fractions with numbers in them, but be very strategic in doing it in a way that builds their confidence and not undermines them and makes them feel dumb and stupid.
That's right. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to, because we are so, and I am just loving the Vision One. We are married to Vision One, and we expect this automaticity. And if they're in your calculus class, then of course they better know that, right? So of course they better know that they have, that 1/3, like 1/2 plus 1/3, the common denominator is going to be 6.
Right.
So they're going to be adding, 2 6 plus 3 6. They're going to get 5 6. You know what I mean? So it's a completely different way of understanding. And yes, I did that in my head right now. So I'm doing Vision One, but anywho, I feel smart. But you know what I'm saying, right? That again, it's this idea of leaning into the expected outcomes of math, right? And the expected way of demonstrating mastery. And we
Yes.
Right?
So that means I had to do some learning, right?
Right.
I couldn't just say, well, this is how you add them. I had to think about, I had to be very strategic, because when I'm teaching pre-calculus students and reminding them about fractions, it's for the purpose of them learning whatever my grade level standard was. So my grade level standard was adding rational expressions.
Right.
So I had to make sure that when I was teaching, and the process that I was using to teach fractions they would get to see the connection between adding algebraic expressions. That is something I had to learn how to do. So I had to learn a new method. I couldn't do it the way that my elementary teacher taught me.
No.
So what I remember learning, fortunately, because I did go through a traditional math education program, I remember learning about multiplying by what they call clever version of 1. And so I would multiply by 3/3, which is 1.
Right.
And I would multiply by 2/2, which is 1.
Right.
And so I'm just making change. I'm just taking a dollar bill and I'm changing it to 4 quarters.
That's right.
That's all I'm doing. It's still equivalent.
Right.
And so then when I showed them that method next to 1/2 plus 1/3, then I put 1/a plus 1/b right next to it. And I was like, well, if you were going to apply this method to the 1/a plus 1/b, what might that look like? Notice I didn't tell them.
Right. There's the questioning technique. You said, if you were about to apply this. So the assumption becomes that, number one, there was something inside the brain as a hooking mechanism. So you activated what was already there, did a reminder, like, I know that you know this. Let me help you bring out what's in there, not the assumption because they didn't know it right away, but they didn't know it.
Exactly.
Right. I remember when I was teaching, and we would do, certain things about literary elements. I would say, now listen, I know that you have been in school X number of years, and I also know that you know what this, and this is. How can I help you remember it? Right? Asking the hooking system to come alive and really disrupting that systemic justification of deficit thinking.
Yes.
Right. And really getting down into how do we make this, palatable, useful, productive, and build up our students. That's the power in the instruction.
Yes.
Right. Like that's
absolutely.
The power there. We do power moves every week. So I'm going to start off with our first power move and get your take on it and see what you think. So power move number 1 is to look beyond the score. Use math data as a starting point, not a label. Ask what students' responses reveal about access, confidence, reasoning, and opportunity to learn. and assess for who gets invited to explain, revise, question, and make sense before being corrected, with the intended outcome that data becomes a doorway into student thinking and not a ceiling on their potential.
I love that. I absolutely love that because it's the student thinking that matters. The answer
Mhm.
will change because
Mm,
problems are going to change. The answers
right,
are going to change. But what's not
right.
going to change is the reasoning that gets there. And I just put this post out yesterday. I was talking to another friend of us, a mutual friend we know, Jalila Frazier.
Yes, yes, I know her.
Yes,
Yeah.
the dope math educator. I was talking
Yes,
with
yes.
her about how there's this tendency for students, because we've trained them very well on Vision One. They keep asking us, "Was this right? Is the answer right?" And my post says, "What a more useful question for me as an educator is to get them thinking about, will this reasoning lead me to the correct answer?" Because
Mm,
the reasoning is more important. Answers matter. I'm not saying answers don't matter, but I'm saying the reasoning matters more.
yeah.
And if we don't ever take the time to figure out how kids are reasoning, and I only know two ways to figure out how kids are thinking. You either have to listen to them or you got to see what they write. Those are the only two ways. Either they got to write
Right.
what's in their brain
That's
or
right.
they got to
They got to
say
talk
it.
about it. They got to say
Those
it
are
or
only two
no.
ways,
That's it.
right?
That is
Because
it.
the answer by itself does not
Tells you
tell you
nothing.
how kids thought about it.
It tells you nothing. It
And
tells you
until you
nothing.
know what their thinking is, you have no clue on how to help them.
Absolutely not. But yet, we have pre made, pull out of your pocket scaffolds for every kid because, scaffolds are, if we have the ready made scaffolds, then we feel like we're able to help them. And I think we need to do more about that. So here's Power Move 2: examine the access decisions, review who gets access. So in the first one, you're going to assess who got it, right? But then you're going to review who gets access to advanced pathways, rich tasks, strong instruction, and meaningful support. And then we're going to ask you to notice how grouping, course placement, recommendations, and questioning patterns expand or restrict opportunity. Ask who is being seen as ready, capable, and worthy of mathematical challenge, with the impact that math opportunity becomes a design responsibility, not a student sorting outcome.
Yeah, that makes me think of the second principle in my ICUCARE framework: be critically conscious. And the way that I
Ooh.
define be critically conscious is understand how stereotypes impact your students,
Mm-hmm.
and then take steps to disrupt that.
To
Right. So that's
disrupt
kind
it.
of like
Yeah.
choosing to see how
Yeah.
stereotypes operate in your classroom,
Right.
and then choosing to act to disrupt that so that you minimize the impact on your marginalized learners. And so one of the strategies that I share with teachers in how you can implement being critically conscious is just do tallies about who's responding. That's exactly what you're talking about. Like who's talking in class,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who's talking in class? And it's just paying attention to that. Are my girls quiet? Are the ones, and it's not just understanding it could be a personality difference. I've just always been I talk a lot. That's probably why I became a teacher. But sometimes it's it may be a personality trait, right? But it's paying attention and then deciding, okay, this person is naturally quiet. What are some strategies I can use to get them engaged? They may not ever raise their hand to
Right.
talk in front of the group, but they may be willing to create a safe space. So I'll consciously put someone in their group that I know that they're comfortable with,
Right.
that they can share their thinking with them, because I know that them sharing their thinking is part of their learning journey, that they
And they have
need
to
to
be,
be able
they
to
need to,
bounce their
they have
ideas,
to.
their
They have to.
incomplete, impartial thinking and thoughts. It's important that they feel safe sharing that because that's part of the learning process. So being critically conscious means I pay attention to that. Or when I
Mm,
put groups together and I know that girls oftentimes get over talked by boys, I think about, okay, is this girl, oh yeah, she can handle herself. I can put her with three boys because she's not going to be intimidated. Oh, but this person, she may be over talked, so I might need to put her in a group with more girls. Like it's
right.
being conscious of that.
Of that, right? And really, and that comes from student knowledge. How well do you know your students in order to use a framework like ICUCARE? How else do you, you know, or a power framework where you have to look at position and ownership and work, right? And those kinds of factors. Here's our last power move: rebuild confidence through visible thinking. Create routines where students explain, question, revise, and make sense out loud. Treat mistakes and partial thinking as evidence to develop, not proof of inability. Notice which students have learned to stay quiet, you just said it, opt out, or hide their thinking in math. With the impact of students being begin to see math as a place where their thinking is worthy of attention and development.
Yeah, when I was talking about kids always asking whether this is right, I came up with two questions I found more useful. One is this, will this thinking lead to the right answer? But the second one I think is even more powerful and connects to what you just said is, what answer might this reasoning, where might this answer lead to?
Lead to. We don't ask
because
that question.
Oftentimes, even if it's the wrong answer, even it might not be the right reasoning, there's powerful learning into following that reasoning, that wrong reasoning, and seeing where it leads to.
That's right.
And there's value in that. And when you allow kids and you create space, they might not be reasoning correctly about this particular problem, but that reasoning has value.
Yeah.
And even in allowing them to develop that reasoning and helping them see, oh, you know what? This led me someplace I didn't want to be. But guess what? I may need to go there. This may be a place I may need to go at another time for another problem. So there's still value in that.
There's value in that. And if you know that the student has is their thinking thread, right? You can begin to unwind their thinking thread. You get a window into their psyche. You get a window into their processing system. Because, if we're trying to get to that 1/3 plus the 1/2, and they begin to give you the 2/5, and you can say, okay, tell me how you got there.
Absolutely.
Then you know, they haven't mastered common denominator yet. They may not understand that they have to do this conversion mechanism in order for the fractions to come out to be the same so that they can then deal with it.
And for most of them, especially by the time they get to pre-calculus, they've learned that they've been taught common denominators, right? But it's been so long.
They forgot,
right? And they never learned the reason why. They never were taught why you have to have common denominators.
Right, just do it. Yeah, the butterfly method. They got the butterfly method.
Oh, you just divide 3 into 6, and then you get 2, and you multiply the numerator by 2. Well, why? Like, that made no sense. And so you're going to forget anything that doesn't make sense to you. You are going to forget, and it's not their fault. That is a function of our brain. Our brains are created to forget, just like computers. It can't store everything. So when you forget stuff, it's not because your brain isn't working properly. Your brain is working properly. That's the way it was built.
It's getting rid of stuff. It's getting rid of stuff that you don't really need and don't use a lot.
Yeah. Exactly. So we have to force our brains to remember, we have to make meaning. That's the only way something's going to stick, is meaning making. And teachers need to provide opportunities, and plenty of opportunities, for students to do that. So I know this is an elementary example, but I just saw this yesterday on Facebook. Somebody a teacher was in one of those teacher groups, Facebook groups, and they were talking about, I'm new to teaching, but tell me what's going on. I'm asking my middle schoolers, what's 100 minus 8, and they can't do it. Like, what's going on? They can't do 100 minus 8. And this is what I explained. This was my explanation. I said, because kids don't make change like we did. They don't have those experiences.
They don't have.
When I saw 100 minus 8, I counted forward.
I count forward.
8 plus 2, right? 10, and then another 96. Like, I had plenty of experiences to do that growing up.
Tactile ones, and not just mental models. You had actual things that happened in your hand that made it stick.
Yes. I
Never
had
did.
those experiences.
Experiences.
And kids don't have those
They do
nowadays.
not.
So we have to stop blaming them.
We
It's
have to
not their
start
fault
blaming
that
them.
we don't, everything's digital and we pay everything with debit cards now. That's not their fault.
It's not. They
That
have
just
no
means that the
concept.
adults, we have to give them other experiences
That's right. They
in
need
class
other
and out of
experiences.
class.
That's right.
And stop being so critical and judgmental. That's the choice. The choice we make.
That's the choice we make. That is the choice we make. And with that, my friend, I want to thank you for joining. You heard it. That is a choice you make to see and to not be judgmental. Our students need hooking systems to connect what we're asking them to learn to their experiences, to who they are as people. And math can no longer be a conveyor belt or a gatekeeping system. So, Dr. Pam, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to having you back so we can
I'd love to come
continue
back.
talking about that. And folks, want to do a couple more reminders for you. Please remember that we have our article here for you to see. Go ahead and get your copy of what student engagement looks like beyond compliance. Stay tuned for our summer power chats as summer winds down for most of us. Dr. Pam, it's going to be our release summer power chat this week. So we got 2 instances with Dr. Pam. So we're excited about that. Also, want to invite you to join to continue this conversation at our Instructional Power Collective. It is a private Facebook group. So we continue the conversation. We ask questions. We want to hear from you and want you to help us build a strong power collective community and continue the show growing. So go ahead, get connected to our Power Collective on Facebook. And next week, we're going to have Keenan Bishop. He's an executive coach, a thought leader, author, musician, educator. And please remember to like, subscribe, hit the buttons you know affects the algorithms. And we will see everybody next week for another session of Let's Talk Power Live.